Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why customers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Ever notice how life's best stories don't happen in your living room? They happen on the open road, out on the water, or parked under the stars. At Progressive, they get that you want to focus on the experience, not worry about the what-ifs. That's why they offer quality insurance designed for your ride, whether that's a boat, RV, or motorcycle. Adventure with confidence. Visit Progressive.com and see how easy it is to protect your favorite way to get away. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in D.C. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Hello, and welcome to It's a Fandom Thing. I'm your host, Erin Marlowe, and each week I'm joined by a panel of guests to discuss all things fandom and pop culture, primarily from a female perspective. You'll find everything from fanfic to cosplay to Schitt's Creek to Supernatural and everything in between. So put on your favorite piece of fandom merch, set aside that fanfic that you're writing about your OTP, and sit back and enjoy this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to It's a Fandom Thing. I'm your host, Erin Marlowe, and we are continuing our Pride Month celebration with a look at the show we look at every year, Queer as Folk. So I'm very, very excited to be returning to Babylon, to be grabbing some lemon bars at the Liberty Diner. And I'm always excited to have joining me E'Shel. So hello, E'Shel.
Hello. Happy Pride, everyone.
Happy Pride, and thank you so much for being here. And we are going to be focusing on season 3 of Queer as Folk this year. So this is part 1. So if we don't get to everything in this part, hopefully it will be talked about in the next part. This is also the first season of Queer as Folk that's a little bit shorter. So there's only 14 episodes. I know now in streaming land, it's usually about 8 to 10 episodes average per season for shows now. So Queer as Folk used to be longer than that. So every time we revisit it, I'd be like, oh yeah, this is back when shows were longer, even on cable networks. But I will be giving some trigger warnings first before we get into things, because there's a lot to cover and there are a lot of trigger warnings. So for part 1, a trigger warning, of course, for drug abuse, steroid abuse specifically. So we will be talking about Ben and his steroid use. Trigger warnings for, not in this one, homophobia won't come up as much really in this one probably, but trigger warning, I guess, for cheating, sort of, I guess would be a trigger maybe for some people. And I actually think that's it for this part, except for maybe, I will say a trigger warning maybe for like if you are dealing with any kind of like infertility or fertility problems or anything like that, that might be sort of triggering when we're talking about Lindsay and Mel. So, yep, I think that's it for this part. Of course, there will be other trigger warnings for the next part. Okay, so I do want to start off with probably one of the biggest things people want to hear us talk about, and that is Brian and Justin's breakup. So, of course, season 2 ended with Justin choosing to leave with Ethan. So Justin moves out, and he's dating Ethan, and Brian says he's perfectly fine, even though he is hooking up with people that he wants to look just like Justin. So, E'Shel, what are your thoughts? First of all, like, there's also the reactions of others. Like, a lot of people, of course, are taking Justin's side. And, of course, Michael isn't. And Michael even ends up getting punched by Brian. So what are your thoughts on sort of everybody else's reaction to Brian and Justin's breakup?
Yeah, because they have thoughts and opinions. I'll go ahead and I guess start with Michael so I don't forget to talk about him. Yeah, so in some ways, Michael is handling this like a best friend would. So, of course, he's taking Brian's side because he's like, Brian, there is some jealousy there, but also he's being a protective best friend. He's like, Brian gave you everything. How could you do this to him? Like, so naturally he is very team Brian on this breakup, and he's refusing to see anything that Brian could have possibly done to contribute to this. So he's very much in on that. I do not like, and I get it. I've got friend groups and like we share things and so I get it sometimes because I'm tempted to say, hey, Michael, it was really not your place to say to them in the club, oh yeah, they just broke up because Justin's been cheating. And it's no, really cheating this. I'm like, really, that's kind of not your place. But I also understand in friend groups, you talk about things at a different level. So I understand that. But you weren't doing it from a place of like being friends with everybody. You were intentionally trying to make Justin look awful to these people. And Justin had been sharing things with you in season 2. And so you should have known, like, okay, even if he's doing something that I disagree with and something that is wrong, I know he's got stuff going on. And where his friends were supposed to care about him. But anyway, so I do not like Mike. While I can respect I'm going to protect my best friend because, look, if somebody did something to my best friend, I'm riding for my best friend, okay? I can understand that part. But it's a little bit different when you know that Justin is a part of that found family that y'all have and just the way that he handles it. He's such a jerk. And what he says at the anniversary party, there's really just no excuse for that when he says, you should have just basically left him there to die. And I'm like, dude, that's real far. That's a bridge way too far for me. But that's who Michael is. He's always got his foot in his mouth. So, which is not an excuse for bad behavior. If you're a person who like speaks before you thinks, that's still not an excuse for the things that you say. So that's how he's handling it. Melanie and Ted are kind of like taking this opportunity to, kick Brian while he's down, And of course they are because that's their dynamic with him. And they've got this kind of, I was going to say love-hate thing with Brian. I think Ted and Emmett don't really understand the true depth of that relationship yet, of Brian and Justin. I don't really think they understand all of that at this point in season 3. I don't think that. So they're like, oh, they broke up. Okay, well, they broke up last time or whatever. So that's what I think they feel about it. Melanie's just, like I said, kind of laughing at Brian's pain. Lindsay is pretty neutral about it because she does love them both. But she is telling Brian, like, hey, you can still get him back, kind of thing, even though it's her and Melanie's fault that Justin found Ethan. But yeah, so that's kind of where they are. And she knows enough about Brian's like, no, you do want him back and you did love him. And then I love how Debbie handles the whole thing. I love how she handles Justin in it. And she's like, excuse you, sir. I don't care what my son said. I don't care what's going on with you and Brian. You are part of this family. You get back here, you show up for work, and we'll see you at the, at all the family things. And so I really love that she handles it in a very Debbie way. Like she doesn't switch up on him. And I think he really needed that. Somebody to still treat him like they were treating him, regardless of his relationship with Brian. So that's what I think about everybody's reactions to it all.
Yeah, I pretty much ditto what you said. I will say though, is that I know you were kind of joking there, but even though Mel and Lindsay introduced them, they didn't it's not their fault.
No, it's not their fault.
I know you're mainly joking. I know you're mainly joking. Yeah, I mean, Michael is being Michael, and this is just the way Michael is. Michael is, he has blinders when it comes to Brian. He can never see Brian as anything that he does is wrong or anything like that. Plus, there is the jealousy, and he's always been very, very jealous of Justin. Justin even says it to him, you're basically getting what you want. I'm not going to be around anymore. And Michael, of course, being who he is basically insinuating that means everybody has to cut Justin out of their lives. And that's not even what Brian wants. So it's, again, this is kind of what Michael does. And I think Michael was just so excited that maybe Justin wouldn't be around anymore that he kind of was just like, cool, I can cut him out. He was going to even stop Rage, from having a second issue. And luckily that got resolved. I don't blame Brian at all for punching Michael. I think the audience as a whole has wanted to punch Michael for a long time at this point. So, anytime you talk to anybody about this show, it's so funny because they'll be like, oh, this character went through this and this. And they're like, oh gosh, Michael. And I know like characters like Brian are controversial and some people don't like him. But Michael, it always seems to be this consensus with most people where it's like, oh, this guy just needs to grow up and stop being so dependent on his childhood crush almost, And, you know, and as far as Lindsay goes, I do think Lindsay definitely is like trying to both sides of it. But Lindsay tends to, because again, my theory is that Lindsay is a little bit in love with Brian, and I've always thought this. And so Lindsay does a lot of what Michael does, frankly. I mean, she always tends to side with Brian quicker than she will somebody else. I think in this situation, she sees both sides and she understands both sides, and she loves Justin and she wants to be friends with Justin still. So I think she's more diplomatic than anybody else. But at the same time, if she were to have to choose between the two, she would definitely choose Brian because she loves Brian and she defends Brian almost as much as Michael does, Mel, it doesn't surprise me that Mel's just like, yeah, well, screw that guy. I think Mel's actually happy for Justin and is like, yeah, you're finally free of Brian. Ted, I think, is happy to see, because Ted has a little bit of jealousy of Brian, I think. He always kind of has. And so I think for Ted, he's just kind of like happy to see like Brian get knocked down a peg is the way he's viewing it. And as far as like with Debbie, I love that Debbie instantly tells Justin, no, you're still part of our life. Don't listen to Michael. Okay, Michael doesn't speak for all of us. You're still part of our life. And, that's kind of the way Debbie's like a surrogate mom to so many of them. And so I love that is the way that her reaction is. And as far as Emmett doesn't seem like, Emmett just kind of seems to be there, frankly. There's not much of a reaction from him. And again, I think Emmett also kind of is like, Emmett's always kind of wanted Michael to kind of let go of Brian, like a lot of people have. I think Ben has gotten to the point where he is secure enough in his relationship with Michael that he is fine with it, but he does, like there's, and this is later when Justin and Michael start working again on Rage, and there, he has that Freudian slip before he's like, Justin's giving, and and Ben's like, oh, well, how does Zephyr feel about this, And so Ben acknowledges that, but I think Ben has so much confidence now, and you have to have confidence to be in a relationship with Michael when you have
absolutely
another guy there all the time. So that's kind of in the shadows there. And the man you love and you're with has been pining over this guy forever. So you have to have confidence there. And I think Ben has definitely gotten to that point. So I don't think he feels jealous. He's just kind of maybe a little bit annoyed. But he's kind of like, okay, this is just kind of the way Michael is, I do think, though, the reaction from everybody else from when Michael gets punched is so interesting because everybody takes Michael's side. And granted, most people didn't even know what he had said. So I kind of understand that. If you were on the outside and you're looking and all you see is the punch, you're going to instantly take the side of whoever gets punched if you don't know what's going on. So that was always interesting to me, that not a single person really outside of the Justin realm of it really like took Brian's side in that.
That part did bother me, but it did track for all of those characters. They would naturally just kind of run to Michael and coddle Michael. But part of me is like, it's out of character for Brian to be violent and definitely to hit Michael of all people. Yeah. So you would think they'd be like, oh, maybe something's going on with him. But yeah. But I also get why they didn't, because they definitely in those early seasons, they kind of see Brian a certain way, and he has contributed to that way that they see him. So it makes sense, even though as a lover of Brian, I'm like, oh, why would y'all not like chase after him and find out what's going on?
Yeah. Pretty typical the way most people responded. And it is, understandable the way that Justin kind of instantly says, well, I'm going to be the one that's going to be lifted out of the group because Brian's been here longer. But I'm glad that people weren't like, go away, except for Michael, So Brian do you think his coping mechanisms, which the big one is sleeping with people that, it's basically sleeping with people, but also hiring people to look like Justin, that look like Justin, dress like Justin. How do you think he's coping with this breakup?
Poor baby. Not well at all. Not well at all. And yeah, he's definitely regressing. We see that with what he's doing with Michael, how he's like, come out here with me and do this with me and da-da-da. And you can say, oh, poor Michael, he's been dragged back into, but also Michael wants to be dragged back into this. And they know how to play off each other. It's that whole toxic thing that they have. So yeah, he's definitely regressing, and he's doing the whole, drinks, drugs, and dudes, just party all the time over there, because in those quiet moments is when he's got Justin on the brain, and that's just too much for him. So we do see him struggle though, but we see him struggle in a very Brian Kinney way, and it's by avoiding it all. It's by getting so high I can hallucinate and pretend that this guy on the table is Justin. We see him we know Brian doesn't have to pay a dime for sex, but we see him doing that, like you said, to get someone who looks like Justin. And he is really just over there in the loft, just kind of suffering and struggling, And at the same time, he doesn't hate Justin. Like, he still wants to protect him. Like at the party when Michael's saying all this stuff, he's like, hey, shut up. Hey, don't tell him he can't be here. Like, no, still work with him on Rachel. Both, like, this is a dream of yours and Justin needs money. So, like, he's still trying to protect him. I think he's always going to want to try to like take care of Justin. I think that's just kind of a commitment that he's made to himself from season 1. In whatever way he can, he's always going to be a protector and a provider for this person in some way. So I think he's trying to balance not letting everyone see how badly I'm hurt by this, not even letting Justin see how badly I'm hurt by this necessarily. And then he's just like, the way he deals with his hurt is to do anything he can to not feel it. So yeah, I don't think he knows a healthy coping mechanism. He's definitely not employing any here. So yeah, that's how I think he's doing with it. Not well, not in these early episodes.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and that's the way Brian is. Brian doesn't really cope with stuff because he doesn't like to admit when he's hurt and vulnerable. And so, of course, he's not going to cope with it well. The interesting thing about Brian is even though sometimes he'll say some offhanded remarks to Justin about Ethan or stuff like that, he's never outright cruel or mean to him about it. He keeps a lot of that close to the vest kind of thing. He's not going to show his vulnerability. I think at the end of season 2, that last episode, when he does take off the rage mask and he looks at him, there's a brief moment of that's Brian being completely vulnerable. And Justin still chose to walk away and be with Ethan. And at the same time, I think there's a part of Brian that understands why Justin would do that, because Ethan, on the surface, is offering Justin everything he says and thinks he wants in a relationship. And of course, we all know what happens with that. But for Justin, for this time being, he is getting everything that he wants to from Ethan, and Brian kind of knows that. And even though Brian might think, oh, this relationship's going to fail, or Brian might be secretly hoping it does, he's never going to say that. And so he's coping the way that Brian does, with the going out all the time, going over to Ben and Michael's apartment and bugging them constantly and everything. And of course, Michael gives in. And I know I said Brian and Michael's, didn't I? I meant Ben and Michael's. That was a weird little thing there. And again, Ben, you have to be really strong to have to deal with that. And I know there are other things that we will talk about soon with the steroids and Ben, but you have to be strong to be able to put up with that. And he does. I think he does get frustrated though, but he's putting up with it as much as he can. But yeah, I don't think Brian's coping mechanisms are ever healthy, not in the way of like coping with substance abuse or anything like that. I mean, more in the fact that he never actually fully deals with the emotions surrounding what happened to him. And that's just kind of the person he is. And so he's coping by avoiding everything while at the same time thinking about Justin all the time. So, yeah. So let's talk about Justin and Ethan's relationship.
All right, here we go. I guess we gotta.
So E'Shel. I know. We're going to rip the Band-Aid off. So tell me about how much you love Ethan and Justin together.
I will. Okay. Yeah. All right. So here is the deal. Brian and Justin are my all-time favorite fictional couple. All-time favorite. They're my favorite. So as much as I hate their breakup, I know it had to happen for where they were at the end of season 2 and like what they each were kind of dealing with, what they each needed to process, where they needed to kind of grow and change perspective on some things. Like, I know it needed to happen. Now, the way it happened wasn't ideal, but anyway, so enter Ethan. And, I will say that I do think it's important for Justin to get to experience a different kind of relationship. At this point, the only person that he's ever been with, like been in a relationship with, is Brian. This is a guy he met on his first night of like, all right, I'm gay and I'm going to own it. And he met that guy that night, and then they just like have had a whole lot of life in a very short amount of time. And so while I think that can happen and that can work out, I do think that it was important for Justin to get to see, okay, well, maybe I want something that looks different. And he kept trying to get that from Brian and trying to like lead Brian into that. Like, hey, let's do this floor picnic. Hey, let's do this or let's do that. And Brian just wasn't going to do it. Which he can decide not to do it. Some of his reasons for not doing it were fine. Some were not fine, but whatever. So anyway, we know why they broke up. And so here's Ethan, who is giving Justin kind of some of the things that he's like, I think I want a relationship that looks like this, something that looks a little bit more, kind of more traditional, a little bit more like something that is committed because I maintain that his relationship with Brian, they were always in a committed relationship. And every time they're together, they're in a committed relationship. It just looks different. They're in what we would now call an ethically non-monogamous relationship. But he wanted like commitment in the like traditional sense where like we're going to be with one person. We're going to talk about a future. We're going to talk about like making these promises to each other. He wanted something with a lot of romance and that sort of thing. And I think he also just needed something that kind of felt easier and that he didn't have to decipher and wonder where he stood with them and that sort of deal. I think it had just gotten like too hard for him to interpret the state of his relationship with Brian just because of all the other things he had going on. So I'm glad that he got to experience this with Ethan. And we're going to just say at the front end of it, Ethan starts out great. He's serenading him in the morning with these probably free chocolates he found somewhere, with this rose that he picks up by some dumpster. They're in I think Ken and I on our podcast called their little place the shanty where they live. And so they're in the shanty, they're having these mornings of like, the music and the strawberries and the lovemaking. And so for right now, it's all the things that Justin thought that he wanted and that he wasn't getting from Brian. So I don't like it because it ain't Brian, but that's what's happening.
Just those chocolates that he probably found. Like,
yeah, I got to take some casual shots at Ethan.
No, I understand the rose by the garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am been a huge shipper of Justin and Brian forever. They're my favorite all-time ship. I acknowledge the issues with them, and I totally acknowledge why people have issues with them galore. I think if this show was out now, whoo boy, the conversation around their relationship would even be more intense. So I get it, but I still love them together. I think their chemistry is incredible, and I love watching them. However, I do understand why Justin would want to be with somebody like Ethan. I don't like Ethan, and it's not just the shipper thing. I just never liked him. He's very forced to me. He's like, I've known a lot of people like this. He's that art snob person who is an artist, and I'm an artiste, and looks down on other on other people and thinks that because they're an artist that they're so much more superior to others. And that's the way Ethan always came across to me. His faux romance and his romantic gestures are very hollow. It reminds me a lot of the nice guy trope. And by that, I mean, the nice guy trope is actually not very good because a lot of nice guys are actually not very good and are very they use that nice guy as a cover for other things that they do. For Ethan, of course, it ends up that he cheats on Justin. He also wants to keep Justin's secret. When he gets that big deal, he agrees to keep their relationship a secret and to say that he's straight. He calls Justin his cousin, all that kind of stuff, which is something Brian would never do. And I think for Justin, who he fought so hard to come out and he fought so hard to be himself, and so to have somebody that he loves want to put him away is really hard for Justin to deal with. But I think Justin is at that point where he's like, well, this is the relationship I want. And this is not Brian. And I've got to remind myself of that. So I'm just going to keep giving it a try and giving it a try. And, he plays the violin or whatever, and he's really good at that. And he's sexy, or even with his annoying goatee thing. And I hate that thing so much. I'm sorry. It annoys me. And he, frankly, Ethan kind of creeps me out. I'll be honest.
I know. He always looks unwashed and untrustworthy.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a difference between being nice and being kind. And I think people don't realize that or don't acknowledge that. You can be nice, but not a kind person.
Mm-hmm.
It's better to be kind. If you're kind, that's genuine. If you're nice, you're just being quote unquote nice. And that's the way Ethan strikes me. And so I just don't like them together. Again, and this was mentioned by E'Shel on our pop culture episode. But remember, just because you dislike this character, that's not the actor. So the actor is not responsible for the character. They are not the character. So you treat the actor with respect unless they are a horrible person. You do not treat them like the way you would treat Ethan. Ethan is a fictional character. And we understand he got in the way of the ship, but that's not his fault. And so I think, the actor, I have no problem with the actor. It's just the character is so annoying and obnoxious and creepy to me. But I think, like you said, this was something that I think Justin needed to do. I think he needed to experience a different relationship. He needed to experience a relationship, frankly, with someone his own age, to be quite honest. And he needed to experience that to see what he truly wanted and to really realize who he wanted to be with and what kind of relationship he actually wanted. And I think that was the lesson ultimately that he learned from being with Ethan. And of course, we'll talk about the reconciliation and all that in part 2 next week. But yeah, so I think it was a necessary evil that we needed. But oh my God, he's so creepy to me. And I have to say, I was very grateful that this was a relationship that only lasted like half a season, because I was so worried, because I watched this show live. So I was so worried when I watched this show live that they were going to end up together forever. I really thought that's the way the show was going to go, or for the rest of the show, or at least for a full season. So I was shocked when that didn't happen. I was pleasantly shocked, but I was still shocked. So.
Yeah. Like they started pretty early on letting us see that things were rocky. So
yeah, but I still watching it live.
But still watching it 1 week at a time coming out, and then it might have even had a mid-season break in there. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm from the OG of what? I'm sorry. That's so annoying when people do that. But
as a 50-year fan.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I do remember, though, how exciting it was when this show was live, but you had to deal with like the hiatuses and all of that stuff. So that was not fun. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to turn our attention to Ben and Michael. And in particular, we are going to talk about Ben using steroids. So we'll be right back.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why customers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Hey, my dog lovers, stop picking hairs off your jumper and listen up. The National Dog Survey from Dogs Trust is back, and whether you have your own dog or just admire them from afar, we want the full scoop. From the joyful moments that make you laugh to the soggy splashed-filled ones you'd rather not relive. Just 15 minutes today could make a huge difference for the nation's dogs of tomorrow. Join our muddy-trousered community by searching Dogs Trust National Dog Survey.
Okay, so Ben and Michael move in together. And then around this time, the beginning of the season, Ben's former lover and the person that he got HIV from dies. And so Ben, of course, goes through a feeling of like fear. I think it's all fear-based. He's afraid. He's faced with his mortality. And I know he's always faced with his mortality, with his illness, but I think at the same time, it's like he's kind of felt okay with it for a while and felt settled, and then this kind of rocks him. And then he starts using steroids, which turns him into a jerk. And he starts pushing Michael away and even saying, you know, maybe I should have been with someone who's positive. So what were your thoughts on this storyline, E'Shel?
I can tell you, I did not see it coming, and it was pretty heavy. Yeah. But, and, you know, as you said, you know, he just lost his partner, the one who transmitted HIV to him, and, well, you know, ex-partner. But that already has to be that's a heavy thing. That's a traumatizing thing, or can be. And, you know, Ben, when we meet Ben, we kind of see that he's on this like natural path. He's all zen and he eats clean and he's studying, I think, Buddhism, I think it might be, or he like references it a lot. He works out. And then here he's having this realization kind of thrust in his face that this thing could still get him, could still kind of take him out. And it's caused him a lot of grief. And so I think like one thing I can say, there are a lot of things that I can say, but one thing for sure I can say about this show and the writing of this show is the writers never shied away from telling the truth, like the very gritty parts of the hard parts of, and things that happened in gay culture, you know, definitely at that time. I mean, they talk about crystal queens. They talk about predatory men who take advantage of young boys at these, you know, who are in desperate need of money, all of that. And, you know, AIDS was very much, and still is, AIDS and HIV were a very real thing. And at the time, steroids was used to combat wasting there. And so it was a way to like make yourself appear healthy, or like, I don't want to look sick. And so, you know, a lot of people took steroids to combat that. And so while initially you might think this doesn't really work for Ben's character, when you think about all that stuff, like it kind of tracks with everything that he's going through. But yeah, the other side of it is that he's dealing with all of this and he's struggling very much in private. Like he's, you know, having to deal with, like, how do I grieve this person? You know, I'm sure there's some anger toward that person. There's some hurt, but also just like, this was a person that I loved for an extended period of time. And so like, how do I grieve this person? But also like thinking about that and what I've got going on in my own life. And he's not really like trusting Michael with this. He's not really bringing him into this. I don't know if it's, I mean, maybe it's because he doesn't want to burden him, or he doesn't want to feel like a burden. And that's why he makes the comment of like, maybe I should have dated someone who was positive because they would understand. And so like that sort of thing. Yeah. So, I mean, it's very hard to watch him go through that and then to watch their relationship go through that also. So I do think that it's a story that is worth telling because it's a very real story, but it's a very hard story to watch.
Yeah, I think it's very hard to watch Ben like that because I know a lot of people are very mixed on Ben. I happen to love Ben. And I really liked Ben and Michael together because I think Ben was really good for Michael. And it is a hard thing to watch because of how much I loved Ben and watching him be really cruel and mean, unnecessarily mean, and not the way he was. But I think when you have a character like Ben who started out almost mythical in a way, where he was so like zen basically all the time. And when you have a character like that can get very boring or very like, can seem not real if you don't see cracks. And I don't like to say him being HIV positive is a crack because I don't agree with that. And so I think he was this very he's this professor. He's very smart. He's kind. He's caring. He's works out. He takes, he eats healthy. He, which again, I don't think that necessarily means that you're a bad or a good person with the way you eat. I'm just saying that the way he's presented is in this very clean. And by clean, I mean like this almost perfect, like body perfect everything. And so I think it was kind of necessary to have a storyline like this. And he has another thing that happens in a later season that he does too, that shows another crack in that perfect persona. And I think actually Ben tries to curate that perfect persona because he has an illness that he is at this time, he can live with it and everything. But at the same time, he knows that it doesn't mean that he is immortal and that there is no way that he will, he could still die from it. He knows that. But so I think Ben is always constantly trying to fight against that. And I think the way he had been fighting against it had been in this more like very zen, very good way. And then when this happens, especially it being the person that infected him, that I think takes that loss to a whole other level, because I'm sure there is anger at that person. I think, which is completely natural and understandable. You are going to have some feelings of anger towards the person who you got this illness from. That's just human nature. I think anybody would feel that way, no matter the situation, no matter if that person knew or didn't know. It's just kind of, that's just natural. And so I think he's dealing with that, dealing with the grief of that, dealing with the losing someone who basically is one, in his mind, he's probably viewing it as one step away from him. And even though he says, well, I told him all the time to take care of himself and he was not taking care of himself, I think he still is like, yeah, but even though I'm taking care of myself, maybe there's even more that I should be doing. And so it makes sense to me that then he would jump to this. It would have been something. And I think steroids makes sense because of the fact that he feels it will make his body stronger to fight off this illness. And is the way he treats Michael, part of it is influenced by steroids, but part of it I think is also that it also holds up a mirror to him of what could happen to Michael. He could become the one who gives it to Michael, just like the person, just like his ex gave it to him. So that also he's confronting that. And so I think that's a part of the reason that he says that to Michael, even though he doesn't mean it. And the scene that is one of the hardest scenes to watch between the two of them, but it's such a well done scene, is the scene when Michael takes one of the used needles and is threatening to eject himself and watching Ben. And that is kind of like that wake up call to Ben, because Michael is not going to do that. But Michael is trying to show Ben how far he's gone away from who he was and trying to reach him and trying to tell him, I love you and I want to be with you. And this is what you're doing to me. And it's one of those moments where Michael is not annoying. And Michael is like, kind of like, it's because this doesn't have to do with Brian. I really think a lot of that is because he's in this healthy, mature relationship. And he loves Ben and he wants Ben to survive and not leave him. And I just think that's such an amazing and powerful scene. Very hard to watch, but I think it was so well done. And I was so glad that this storyline didn't last as long as maybe it could have, maybe in reality it would have. But I do think it was essential, as hard as it was, to do this with the character of Ben. So he became an even more fleshed out and real human being, because we're all messy and we all make mistakes. And yeah, and I love Ben. I really love Ben. Ben makes Michael tolerable. He really does.
He really does. Like, y'all can't come over to the dinner party unless Ben's coming too. Like, Michael, you can come if Ben's going to be with you.
Yes, I love him. And we'll talk about it more in part 2 when we talk about Hunter. But I still love his line. It's one of my favorite lines of the whole show when he's like, wants to take Hunter in and Michael, as opposed to it. And he's just like, come on, Michael, it's Christmas. Where's your Christmas? He's like, it's not Christmas. But it's the way that that line is delivered. I don't know. It'll always crack me up. Yeah, I love Ben so much. And I'm glad that he was able to, get sober and stuff. And yeah. Okay, so let's move on to Ted and Emmett. So we aren't going to be focusing on the drug stuff with Ted until part 2, just to let everybody know. So Ted and Emmett get together and start dating. So, E'Shel, what were your thoughts on this couple?
Okay, so on first watch, I was not a fan of their relationship. On my very first time watching the show through. Now, I was binging it, so whatever feelings that I had, I didn't hold on to them for very long because I blew through when I was watching the whole series for the first time. And it is still not my favorite relationship for them, but I do love their love for each other over the course of the show. And eventually, I came to understand why they took this leap in their friendship. And it was like, hey, we do love each other. This is a person that I care about a lot, more than anybody else around me. They understand me. They kind of let me be me. They see me. They value me. And so it makes sense to oh, and I think at some point they had to just somebody in the friend groups got to try it out together. It wasn't going to be Brian and Michael. So,
Yeah.
So somebody had to try it out just for the storyline. I think it just had to be that way. And so it kind of makes sense why they say, hey, it works in these other ways. What about the romantic piece too? And I think that it's handled pretty realistically, because when they first go into it, and there are a lot of nerves, and there are a lot of, will we be able to go back to friends if this doesn't work out? And then they're like, are we going to have chemistry, sexual chemistry together? And you can see it on both of them, but definitely in Emmett, it's given just a hint of almost buyer's remorse at the beginning, because he's like, oh man, not that he doesn't love Ted or want Ted or whatever, but just maybe I committed to this and I shouldn't have. We should have kept it as friends. And so everybody else is expecting oh man, they're already going at it. Oh, and Melanie and Lindsay oh, it's going to be y'all's anniversary next year and this kind of thing. And they're like, whoa, we're not even there yet. And so I do appreciate it for all of that. And yeah, so I like to kind of see the two of them in a different way. They have really great chemistry together as friends in this show already. And so I liked seeing them kind of make this shift. Again, I will say it's not my favorite relationship for the two that they each have, but I have come to terms with it and I can understand it and appreciate it.
Yeah. When I first watched this show, when I was watching it live, I actually really, really liked this. It was not something I even thought about. I'm a fan of friends to lovers when it's done right, that trope. And so I remember when I was first watching this, and I remember watching season 2 and Ted having a crush on Emmett. And I was kind of like, oh, this is kind of interesting. This is cute. I never really would have thought of this. And so I was like, okay, cool. I'll kind of see how this works. I end up hating this relationship a lot, honestly. And I'll talk about that more in part 2. But when it first started out, I thought it was really cute and sweet. And I liked the fact that they didn't instantly go to bed with each other and everything was there were no insecurities or there were no nerves about that. I'm glad that they didn't go that route. And instead they had the insecurities and the nerves. The first time when you see him, when they're going to attempt to have sex the first time, and Ted's got all the sex toys laid out, just kind of going over the top, which is very Ted. And, that nervousness and wanting to make sure that they're going to be adequate partners. And then, of course, Emmett hooks up with that other guy, with that flight attendant. And so you have that plays on Ted's insecurities already. And so I like the fact that it started out where they both weren't positive about it. But then once they really connected. And I think because they already had that deep friendship love and they're best friends, I think that made their romantic relationship, once they realized they did have that sexual chemistry, even stronger and more powerful. And that's why what happens with Ted is so much more heartbreaking, because I think if that hadn't happened, I think they had the potential to actually go long term and even get married. I honestly believe that, but I think what happened with Ted just destroyed all hope of that. And I'm like E'Shel. There is one particular person that I ship Emmett with, and we have not met them yet. And there's one person that I ship Ted with, and we have met them. So I have my people that I ship them with. But the first time around, when it first was live, I liked it. And then you'll hear more about that in part 2. I'm going to save a lot of that for part 2 because if you've listened to past episodes, if you listen to our Ted and Emmett episode from a few years ago, I talk about that, about how I'm not really a big fan of certain storylines this season with them. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say. But I think at first, I think they were really cute and interesting to explore. And it also had to test a little bit of Ted's, Ted being able to let someone else into his world and his life. And someone like Emmett, who is a lot more, who's not as, I don't want to use the word like, who doesn't have the same kind of like wanting everything to be in the right place all the time, that kind of thing. So that was interesting to explore when they try to buy a house together. I thought that was I liked that storyline a lot too. So I thought they had a lot of cute moments. And I really do believe if what happened to Ted hadn't happened, I do believe they could have gone the marriage route. Because I think they were absolutely madly in love with each other. Like, I never doubted that. I think that was very real. And I don't think this was a fake, forced thing. I think in some respects it made sense. And like you said, E'Shel, someone in this group had to do the friend thing. And I know when I first watched this, I really thought it was going to be Ted and Michael the first season when I watched this live. But this makes sense. And yeah, so I was fine with it at first, and then my thoughts changed. But okay, so we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, we are going to talk about Lindsay and Mel and deciding to have another baby. So we'll be right back.
We love our pets. They're our best friends as we navigate life's ups and downs with a wag or a purr just when we need it. The Royal Veterinary College is there for our pets, home to Europe's largest small animal referrals hospital, with over 200 specialists providing expert care 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The bond between a pet and their person is worth fighting for, and that's the belief that inspired the RVC Memory Tree, a beautiful handmade sculpture standing in the heart of the RVC Small Animal Referrals Hospital, adorned with gold, silver and copper leaves, each one engraved with the name of a beloved pet, and each one funding the extraordinary work happening there every day. For just £10 a month, you can dedicate a leaf in the name of your pet, celebrating your pet's life, whilst also helping to fund life-saving treatment and care for animals in need. Visit rvcact.com/memory tree to dedicate a leaf today and let your pet's memory live on.
Okay, so Lindsay and Mel, well, Mel basically is the first one to really bring up wanting another child. But Mel doesn't want to carry that child at first. That, of course, is what Lindsay is going to do. And Lindsay doesn't want to have another child, doesn't want to at least carry another child. So then Mel decides to, and Michael ends up being the one they pick because Mel does not want Brian to be the one, which makes sense that Mel would say that in some respects. So what are your thoughts on this storyline? This is really the only storyline for Lindsay and Mel the whole season. So
yeah, well, listen. Oh, Melanie and Lindsay. The way those two argue, fuss, and fight, I'm like, y'all sure you want another baby? But, I mean, yeah, for many reasons. Not one of them being like every other week, Lindsay is trotting over to Brian's house with Gus on her hip asking for money. But I don't judge, but I do observe. And I'm like, are we sure we need another child here? Just because, like, their relationship is always something. But I also get that this is the only lived-in relationship that we get at the start of this show. And so they're going to have issues that are different from everybody else's issues. So I get that. I do love Melanie and Lindsay, though. Anyway, okay. Yeah, I think that well, first of all, what they're going through is very real. In season 1, Melanie was kind of feeling some jealousy and feeling overlooked because here's this new baby and, she's not the primary parent. Lindsay was. And I don't think she was quite fully prepared for how much a baby would shift the dynamics in their home. And so this is not the baby's fault and it's not Lindsay's fault. But because of all of that, Melanie ends up cheating because she's not feeling like she's getting what she wanted or what she needs at the time. And then here in season 3, Melanie is feeling like, all right, I've gotten the hang of being a wife and a parent and a professional. So she's like, all cylinders are firing for her. And she's like, yeah, all right, it's time for round 2. Like, let's do baby number 2. But now we have Lindsay who's feeling like my whole life has been on hold because I've been devoted to being wife and mom. And that's like all I've been. And there's this whole other part of me that has been on hold. I haven't been able to do that. And plus, she carried the baby. She was the primary parent. And so her experience with having a baby is completely different to what Melanie's would be to adding another child. So I fully understand why she's like, I'm not going to carry it. And I don't really know that I want this. But then they sit and they have a conversation about why they want to do it. And then Melanie, like you said, decides that she's going to be the one to carry this time. And yeah, then they do the whole, like, who's going to be the baby daddy? And they land on Michael, which would not be my pick. But I understand that pick for Melanie. Although I'm thinking, girl, you know how over the top and extra Michael is. Why would you do this? And then we love Debbie, but Debbie as your
Yeah.
as the grandmother or whatever, like, whoo, you sure signing up for some stuff, girl. And she sure signs up for it. We won't get into it, but what we learn later, she sure signs up for some stuff there. But I mean, I do like this journey for them because that's a real conversation that lived in couples have when it comes to kids and adding another. And especially when you're having to do it in, just different ways. You have to assemble your family in a different way. So yeah, I mean, like you said, this is kind of their story for the season. And good for them. Good for them. They have decided to have another baby.
I hate this storyline. I do. I hate this storyline. I hate it more and more every time I watch it. And there's very specific reasons why. I don't hate the fact that they want to have another child. That's fine. It is the insinuation that all women should want to have a child, want to bear children. And that comes with Mel. Mel, I think, is almost, even though I don't like the way that she kind of just tells people they're having another baby when Lindsay kind of just says, oh yeah, you make a good case for it, never agrees to it. That is shitty. But to almost bully Mel into having this baby in a lot of respects really irritates me because as someone who chose not to have children, who has chosen not to have children for very specific, very intimate reasons, that was a very, very personal decision that I made. There's always that thing of like, well, if you don't have children, then you're not really a woman if you don't really do that. And that to me is the way this story comes off. And I was listening to a podcast recently where they were debating like the best LGBTQIA plus television show. And they were talking about this. And one of the panelists said, I don't even think Queer as Folk likes lesbians. I don't think they like the women in the show. And I know that has been something that has been mentioned a lot. I know people in the community that do not like this representation. And I think when I was watching it this time, it bugged me even more because it almost felt like the writers were like, we don't know what to do with them, so we're just going to have them have another child. And I don't know. I don't like it. I just don't like it. It feels there's some parts of it that almost feel sexist to me in some respects. I think it's really bizarre to choose Michael. I understand, I guess, but, if they were annoyed with Brian being like as little as involved as he is, they're going to choose someone who they know is probably going to be 10,000 times more involved. I honestly, and I think it's just because I know how close they were. I'm talking about this is before, Ted's downfall in this season. I'm surprised Mel didn't kind of say him because they're such good friends. That kind of surprised me. But I mean, I guess it makes sense, but at the other side, it's like you are going to have someone who's going to be so much more involved in this child's life than Brian. And you see that Michael basically stalks Mel, and he's stalking her and becomes overly involved right away. So that was an interesting decision. And I think also, while I understand because it's her body, she gets a say in the sperm that's going to be in there to help impregnate her. She gets a say in that. That's her body. But it is interesting to me that they agreed they wanted to have their children related, and then that ends up not happening. So I don't know. It's like the only story they give them for this season.
Yeah.
And
I swear she's pregnant for like 3 seasons. So it goes on beyond that. Yeah. And I did ask the writers about that story. I mean, I'm never going to, everybody's entitled to interpret something and feel how they want about something, and everybody's, opinions are valid on it all. But I did ask them about that, about this whole storyline with Melanie, and then ultimately like where it goes with Michael. And it was based on one of their like real friends. And so that's why they wrote that story and wrote it to be Michael and wrote it to go the way that it went. And I think it's just what's unfortunate about this show is that Melanie and Lindsay are the only lesbian couple that we get. And so anything that is said for those 2 women, it's like you're saying that for all lesbians, which I know they're not doing. I know that's not true. That's not the right way to watch television, but it still comes across that way. And the impact is still that way a lot of times. And so that's just kind of an unfortunate deal. I really wish that if we're only going to get 2 lesbians, part of me almost wishes that they weren't together, that they were in separate relationships or something like that. So we got to see 2 different experiences at least. But
yeah. And I mean, this has always been my biggest issue with this show, are these 2 people. As I've watched it and rewatched it, Mel has turned out to be my favorite of the 2. Lindsay just... Lindsay is like
because
Michael.
it's what you said. It's because she's in love with Brian. I mean, that actress played that beautifully. It's because she's part of it for me, what makes her annoying is she's in love with Brian, and she's manipulative with Brian, with Melanie. Like, she's very manipulative in like a very subtle way. But yeah, I agree with you. Melanie becomes my favorite.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the reason it's irritated me more now, like, I'm sure when I first watched this, I honestly don't remember what my reaction was to this story. But I think the older I've gotten, and especially after my own decision and knowing that, to just put women in this camp of like, oh, well, all women want to have children. And I know they already have a child. I understand that. But for me, it's very reductive. And I understand this might have been based on this is based on a real story of someone they know. I understand that. But to me, that's like, okay. And I understand you're drawing in your own life, but I think
it's because it's the only perspective that we get. I mean, I think it's important to have somebody say, hey, I was told I can't have a kid, but I want a kid and I want to carry a kid. I'm going to do what it takes, and I'm going to go through the struggles of infertility like, that's a very powerful story. There are a lot of people who are represented by that story, but I also agree with you. There are a lot of people who are not represented by, every woman's got to have because that is true. Some women feel like that's what they want. And they're like, my body should be able to carry a child. I want to be able to do that. I'm a woman. I should be able to do that. And that's fair and that's valid. But so is the opposite of like, yeah, I'm a woman. I don't want to carry a child. And I've chosen not to.
Yeah. And that's mainly what my thought is. And I understand you can't have everything represented in a show. I get that. But at the same time, when you have very few female characters in the show, and when you have your only main lesbian characters in the show, and their main storylines are all either about having babies or getting married. Those are their main storylines throughout the whole entire series. And again, this is my favorite. But I mean, I'm just talking about their main focus is we're getting married and we're in a relationship, or we're going to break up and we're going to have babies. And that's their whole focus. It's kind of reductive in my opinion, and it doesn't. And again, this is my favorite show, but I think all art is up for criticism and critique. And this just really bothers me. Every time I've watched it, it bothers me more and more because it feels very forced. and it doesn't feel natural to me. And I think it would have been more interesting in a way if maybe they didn't. I mean, I don't know if they didn't have this storyline in there and they did something else with them. And I know they're trying to do the, where Lindsay's going back to work and all of that, but it still all kind of plays into that same thing with them. It bothers me, and it really bothers me. Also, it feels very sexist to me. It just does, plain and simple. And I mean, it's great for people that can watch it and relate to it. Great. I'm very, very happy for you. But this is my least favorite part of this. No, it's not my least favorite part of the season. No, it's not. But it's one of my least favorite storylines for them, I have to say. So, yeah. So, again, I love this show, but there are certain things that I do not like about this show. And this is one of them. So, yeah. But that'll do it for part 1. I know. We just scratched the surface. We have so much more to get to, including my least favorite storyline of the season. I am a lot more critical of this show, even though it's my favorite one, than I think a lot of people that love this show are. And it's funny because the more I've watched it, the more critical I get of it. But I still love it. I still adore it. I still crack up. There are certain lines. Oh, that reminds me. I wanted to bring up a line that there's a scene in this when after Michael went to go and donate, and he can't donate. He's not able to do it. And there's the scene with him and Debbie and Brian, and they're sitting there. And Brian always has some of the best lines in this show, okay? No matter what you think of Brian is hysterical because he delivers them in such this dry way. Gail Harold is just so good at it. And Debbie says something like hard or something, or hard on. So, like she's not saying a hard on, but she's saying hard on. And Brian's like, you don't want to say that word around Michael. And then Debbie's like trying to console Michael and saying, well, it's okay. It happens, performance anxiety, right, Brian? And Brian's like, I don't understand those words or something like that. And it's so great. It's hysterical because it's just like so Brian to say that. And it's just like so quick. And, he's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. That's not me. I don't have that. I love it. It's just kind of along those same lines of in season 2, my favorite scene with Brian is when Brian is really drunk, and Michael's upset because Debbie's dating Horvath, and Ted's in the car too, and Michael's driving Ted and Brian, and they get pulled over by the cop, and Ted's like, do you have anything on you? And he's like, yeah, I have like this amount of heroin and this. The way he says that whole car ride, I don't know, that whole thing is so funny. So I just wanted to bring that up. Okay, well, thank you, E'Shel, and thank you to everybody out there listening. It's always fun to go back and revisit my favorite show and to talk about it. So thank you for joining me. And of course, we will be back next week with part 2. But it is time for 6 Degrees of Mr. Finn Whitrock. And yes, we are going to... Did you play? You had a look on your face like you did. Okay.
Yeah, I had to find where I wrote my notes. Yeah.
So, how did you connect Mr. Finn Whitrock to Queer as Folk?
Okay, I went with Hal Sparks because I knew I'd be a little rough on him this episode. So I was like, okay, we'll do something fun with him. So Hal Sparks was in Dickie Roberts' former child star with Alan Blumenfeld, who was in A Midsummer Night's Dream with Finn Whitrock.
Oh, we have not used that movie in I think we've used that a total maybe of 3 times.
Oh.
So, yay, very good. So I used Gail Harold, who was in the movie Particles of Truth, which is actually a really good movie if you haven't seen that, everybody out there. Have you seen that, E'Shel? It's good. I haven't seen it in ages, but it was good when I saw it. With Mark Margulies, who was in the movie Noah with Finn Whitrock. So there you go. Once again, proves that almost everybody, it's really easy to play 6 Degrees of Finn Whitrock, I want to say. whenever we do Finwit Rock birthday trivia and I try to do like a 6 degrees of separation category, I'm always trying to do like ones that are a couple. So I kind of have to fib because you can basically, he is like only like 1 or 2 degrees away from like so many people. And you really realize it when you start playing this game more. So, but thank you for playing, E'Shel. And I'll be curious to see who you pick next week. But we're going to go ahead and close out. And E'Shel, tell everybody about Queers and Quills.
Of course. Queers and Quills is a queer romance book convention that is happening June 2027 in Portland, Oregon. We are coming together for a weekend to celebrate some of our favorite queer stories and the authors of those stories with some lovely readers from all over. Like, tickets are on sale in September, so you got time. And yeah, it's just a weekend devoted to celebrating queer joy and love. We will have panels and some little social events and a time to meet authors and get your book signed and all that good stuff. So yeah, you can check us out at queersandquills.com. We're also on Instagram, and according to Erin, we're on Facebook. And it's Queers and Quills.
It's true, they are. And once again, check the show notes and you'll be able to find a link to that too. So yay. Fergie is much too young to watch this show, although she does watch it with me. So, but she likes horror. She prefers horror and Abbott Elementary and true crime. And she is a cute little dog that you can follow on, I almost said Facebook. You can't follow her on Facebook. You can follow her on TikTok at Schroeder and Fergs. That's SCHROEDERANDFERGS. It's long, but it's worth it. To find links to all our past episodes, links to our social media, including our Discord server, head on over to our website. It's a fandomthingpod.com. And there you can find like all our past episodes covering queer as folk. So there's a lot of them there. So if you haven't listened to them, head on over there. Our most popular one, which this should not shock anyone, is our queer as folk episode that we did on Brian. That is our most popular episode we have done so far with queer as folk. So not a shocker to me, but while you're there, consider becoming a Patreon supporter today. For as little as $3 a month, you can get ad-free content, episodes a day early, and bonus episodes. Like if you're a fan of the Vampire Lestat, we will be doing a special bonus episode on that. I'm sure E'Shel will be there. I'm not positive when that'll be, maybe July, August, not positive yet. We will be doing a special bonus episode talking about the 5th and final season of The Bear. I will try not to cry through that whole episode. I'm just emotional when I watch the trailer. I'm like, oh, this show's ending. You can find past episodes we've done. I'm forgetting some of the ones we've done, but we've done special episodes for Pride Month. Lots of them covering different movies. We've done episodes talking about lots of things that I can't even remember now. I apologize, everybody. It is like, it cooled down to 83 degrees, and I have to turn my AC off when we're recording. So apologies, my brain gets a little bit fried. But anyway, you can check the link in our show notes or head on over to the Support Us tab on our website, which once again is it'safandomthingpod.com. Also on that Support Us tab is the link to our Redbubble store. And in our Redbubble store, we have merch that says, "It's a Brian sex on legs Kinney thing." Because if you don't know, that's my way that I refer to Brian, is Brian sex on legs. So I have always said that. So then we ended up designing something. Erin A did. So you can find that in our Redbubble store if you want to get stickers. If you want to get a mug that says that, you have to look because it's not suitable for work. So it's kind of like hidden. You have to click on it and everything like that. But yeah. And next week, of course, E'Shel will be back for part 2 of Queer as Folk Season 3. We'll be talking about Hunter. We'll be talking about Brian and Justin getting back together. We'll be talking about Ted. And yes, Ted's downfall. I know I said downfall, but his addiction. I just mean it that way. I know. And we'll also be talking about Debbie and Vic's love life. So until next time, remember, it's a fandom thing. Black Lives Matter, stop Asian hate, and free Palestine.